especially when, this is the Vilan Podcast, but in terms of like eschatology is the study of end times, and then soteriology, the study of like, how somebody is saved. Like, so you get all these people that are really good in certain doctrines or explaining things a certain way. So you can be an expert, but you can't explain stuff. You're useless, right? So you'll usually write a book and then I'll read the book and that type of thing. But there's certain guys that are kind of like good at, understanding the information and relaying the information into like in a consumer friendly format. This is one of the things that we talked about. We've always wanted to do was like create some type of conference where through either our efforts here or some other means, we bring those minds together, and then we're able to kind of piece together the parts where we think that either one person is missing out, or they're strong in these areas but they're weak in these areas, and kind of like complement one another. And so we use the idea from the biblical parlance, like we're all part of the body of Christ. We come together, and you're just as necessary as I am. Right? We all have a role to play. I can't play your role. You can't play mine. But that's for another podcast, right? So, but for this type of stuff here, so we want to kind of give them an overview on the stuff that we want to cover here. The idea of like what all does the New World Order entail? When you hear those terms, obviously, if you post a video on YouTube, the first thing that's going to pop up is that thing at the bottom, that little banner that they put.
Or something like that.
It says New World Order Wikipedia article that's a conspiracy theory. First thing that's going to pop up. Right? So, but now that you can string together probably from their own mouths, probably going back. So the New World Order, legitimately, before we get into that, us explaining what we think it is, you can legitimately string together a whole bunch of quotes from guys going back 30, 40, 50 years. And so there's this progress that's made, like can refer to American hegemony, right? So hey, America's the sole superpower. As we take over, we're kind of like the tip of the spear going into the world, and now we're kind of setting the precedent for everybody else. So it's a new world order. We have a base currency that's the currency that oil is traded in. So
petrol dollar.
It's basically our dollar. So when you look at like this, now it's known as the Pax Americana, right? And that's based on the old idea of the Pax Romana, where nobody was able to confront Rome because of their military power. We are kind of like the parallel to that today. Nobody can confront America because of our military power. And so, you're going to have some, ebbs and flows in that. If you look at the statistics on like a military personnel over time, like going back, 50, 60 years, the progression that's made, and then you see the uptick in technology, the military industrial complex, how much money we've been spending on the military. It doesn't matter if you have 1 million troops, if I can push a button and take you out in 5 seconds, right? So
even the idea of like right now, the relevant thing is the gas and the gas prices, the consumption. What we're being told is now that people are coming off a pandemic and they're using more gas, more demand means higher prices. But people we're number 3 when it comes to in America using gases, right? So we talked about this the other day. Number 1 is military.
Military, agriculture,
and then agriculture, and then we have this one, right? So we're spending a lot of money on military, that's for sure.
We are, right?
To the point where we can leave $85 billion worth of equipment somewhere, which makes it like makes it like in Europe, even NATO countries. I think Turkey has the number 1 military, and they're about 80 billion. So we left 5 billion more of their annual whatever they spend on their army.
So I mean, that idea is that's the military industrial complex. So the idea was, we don't want to, after we emerge victorious as the sole superpower, we're not going to scale back the American muscle. What we're going to do is ramp it up. And so now, if you look at all the companies that like are making Vanguard and BlackRock, and so
they recently passed the $10 trillion mark.
But I mean, they're managing assets of paramilitary corporations, right? So and when you look at that, you go, well, we've dumped so much money into defense, and so for good reason. If you're
it's a good title, defense. We haven't had to defend against anything if you think about it.
And then you look at like directed energy weapons, the amount of research that's gone through that, DARPA, Minor Corp, the Jason Group. There's a whole bunch of those, and that's good stuff that we're going to get into later, because a lot of people wouldn't know like the Jason Group, or Minor Corp and stuff like that. So like Lockheed Martin. On all those guys, but there's a whole bunch of like subsidiaries and guys that were reaping a lot of money during the Cost Plus program.
Yeah, we mentioned a lot of them in the Communist Version 1 and Communist Version 2.
Yeah, with the Cost Plus stuff. So, and transatlantic traders, Blackwater, Khaki, Keller, Brown and Root, all those guys. But so if you're moving this thing towards a one world government,
so if the question is what is the one world, the
New World Order,
New World Order,
So we were not going to answer that in this one. This is just an introduction, like a Kickstarter. But these are the type of ideas that we're going to cover, and we have some slides that perhaps we can kind of share on either the archive website that we want to build, or we can just stick them on Iconic Label somewhere, like a one-off place where they can download them.
Yeah.
But when we're talking, the New World Order, essentially these are the concepts that we're going to cover: a one world government, a one world religion, a one world currency. This concept of depopulation, the rewilding projects, global communism, transhumanism, totalitarianism, which is going to lead to the fourth industrial revolution. We're going to talk about how revolutions have been instrumental in like making the change from monarchies over to nation states. And so the outgrowth of that was a strong middle class that wanted to participate. And then those guys wanted to participate in their political futures. They didn't like the divine right of kings idea. And so, you get this birth of like the corporation or the corporate state, right? And that's going to go through its progression. And the thing that's going to put it into the nation states is going to be another revolution, which Klaus Schwab is so famously talked about, the fourth industrial revolution.
He's becoming the next famous guy. For somehow Fauci disappeared, and you have a new evil guy everybody's watching for,
Yeah, it literally looks like Dr. Evil. And so... but we still have to go back and make sure that people understand the history of it, right? So you have to understand the Rhodes-Milner Roundtable group. So Cecil Rhodes and his 7 wills, he leaves that aside. He creates a secret society. And the idea was to galvanize the world's wealth, run the wealth through central banks, set up different foundations and funds like the Rhodes Scholarship. Because when they die, they need to pass this idea down to the next generation. So, and then with that, the 7 mountains of influence. Where do people go to get their information? And then, which groups did they found? You get the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderberg Group, the Royal Institute of International Affairs, the Club of Rome, Budapest, and Madrid. And then what did those guys produce for us, right? So you get, U.S. Federal Reserve System, the League of Nations, the International Monetary Fund, the United Nations, the World Bank, the World Health Organization, the World Trade Organization, and the list is long.
It's massive. So the idea is that all these companies, they don't just pop out of nowhere.
No.
What it reminds me of? Like kind of when you look at animation, every single part of it, it's not randomly there. Somebody had to sit down and it was drawn and there's a purpose to it, whether it's like as a background or whatever.
Yeah, or look at film. So film, you have 4 corners, and then you get to control everything that somebody's going to hear and see in that frame. And that's what they've been doing. They've been framing the world a certain way, and people have rightfully pointed out, like, they're in control of the educational system. That's not a new concept. Where do you think it came from is